Chapter 6 The Captain's Papers. We rode hard all day till we drew up before Dr. Lindsay's door. The house was all dark in front. Mr. Dance told me to jump down and knock, and Dodger gave me a stirrup to descend by. The door was opened almost at once by a maid. "Is Dr. Livesey in?" "No," she said. She had come home afternoon, but had gone up to the hall to dine and pass the evening with the squire. "So then we go, boys," said Mr. Dance. This time, as distance was short, I did not mount, but ran with Dodger's stirrup leather to the lodge gates, and up the long, leafless, moonlit avenue, to where the white line of hall buildings looked on either hand on the old gardens. Here Mr. Dance dismounted, and, taking me along with him, was admitted at a word into the house. The servant led us down a matted passageway, and showed us at the end into the great library, all lined with bookcases and bursts on top of them, where the squire and Dr. Lindsay sat, pipe in hand, on either side of the bright fire. I had never seen the squire so near at hand. He was a tall man, over 6 feet high, and broad in profile, and he had a bluff, round, and ruddy face, all rough and reddened and lined in his long travels. His eyebrows were very black and moved readily, and this gave him the look of a stone temperer. Not bad, you would say, but quiet and high. "Come in, Mr. Dance," said he, very stately and condescendingly. "Good evening, Mr. Dance," said the doctor, with a nod, "and good evening to you, friend Jim. What good wind brings you here?" The supervisor stood up, straight and stiff, and told his story like a lesson. And you should have seen how the two gentlemen leaned forward and looked at each other and forgot to smoke in their surprise and interest. Then, when they turned about how the mother went back to the inn, Dr. Livesey fairly slapped his thigh, and the squire cried, "Bravo!" and broke his long pipe against the grate. Long before it was done, Mr. Trunley, that you will remember was the squire's name, had got up from his seat and was striding about the room, and the doctor, as if to hear better, had taken off his powdered wig and sat there, looking very strange indeed with his own close-cropped black poll. At last Mr. Dance finished the story. "Mr. Dance," said the squire, "you are a very noble fellow, and as for riding down that black, atrocious miscreant, I regard it as an act of virtue, sir, like stamping on a cockroach. This lad, Hawkins, is a trump, I perceive. Hawkins, will you ring that bell? Mr. Dance, must you have some ale? And so, Jim," said the doctor, "you have the thing that they were after, have you?" "Have it is, sir," said I, and gave him the oilskin packet. The doctor looked it all over, as if his fingers were itching to open it, but instead of doing it, he put it quietly in the pocket of his own coat. "Squire," said he, "when Dance has had his ale, he must, of course, be off on his master's service. But I mean to keep Jim Hawkins here to sleep at my house, and, with your permission, I propose we should have up the cold pie, and let him sip." "As you will, Livesey," said the squire. "Hawkins has earned better than a cold pie." So a big pigeon pie was brought in, and put on a side table, and I made a hearty supper, for I was hungry as a hawk, while Mr. Dance was further complimented and at last dismissed. "And now, squire," said the doctor. "And now, Livesey," said the squire in the same breath. One at a time," laughed Dr. Livesey. "You have heard of this Flint, I suppose?" "Heard of him?" cried the squire. "Heard, you say? He was the bloodthirstiest buccaneer that sailed." "Blackbeard was a child to Flint," The Spanish were so prodigiously afraid of him that I tell you, sir, I was sometimes proud he was an Englishman. I've seen his topsails, with eyes off Trinidad, and the cowardly son of a rum puncheon that I sailed with put back, sir, into port of Spain. Well, I heard of him myself in England, said the doctor. But the point is, had he money? Money, cried the squire. Have you heard of the story? What there were villains after but money. What do they care for money? For what would they risk their rascal carcasses for but money? That we shall soon know, replied the doctor. But you are so confoundedly hot-headed and exclamatory that I cannot get a word in. What I want to know is this. Supposing that I have here is in my pocket some clue where Flint buried his treasure, will that treasure amount to much? Amount, sir, cried the squire. It will amount to this. If we have a crew we talk about, I fit out here, ship at Bristol dock, and take you and Hawkins here along, and I'll have that treasure if I search a year. Very well, said the doctor. Now, then, if Jim is agreeable, we'll open the packet. And he laid it before him on the table. The bundle was sewn together, and the doctor had to get out his instrument case and cut the stitchings with his medical scissors. It contained two things, a book and a sealed paper. First of all, we'll try the book, observed the doctor. The squire and I were both peering over his shoulder as he opened it, for Dr. Lively that kindly mentioned to me to come around from the side of the table where I had been eating, to enjoy the sport of search. On the first page there was only some scraps of writing, such as a man with a pen in his hand might make for idleness or practice. One was the same as a tattoo mark. Billy bones his fancy. Then there was Mr. Cone's mate. No more Rome. Off Palmsky he got it, and some other snatches, mostly single words unintelligible. I could not help wondering who it was that got it, and what it was that he got. A knife in his back was as not. Not much instruction here, said the doctor, as he passed on. The next 10 or 12 pages were filled with a series of entries. There was a date at one end of a line, and at the other a sum of money, as in common account books. But instead of explanatory writing, only a varying number of crosses between the two. On the 12th of June, 1745, for instance, a sum of £70 had plainly become due to someone, and there was nothing but 6 crosses to explain the cause. In some few cases, to be sure, the name of a place would be added, as off the carcass, or a mere entry of latitude and longitude as 62 degrees, 17 minutes, 20 seconds, 19 degrees, 2 minutes, 40 seconds. The last record lasted over nearly 20 years. The amount of separate entries growing larger as time went on. At the end of a grand total had been made of, after 5 or 6 wrong additions, and these words appeared, Bones his pile. I can't make head or trail of this, said Dr. Lively. The thing is as clear as noonday, cried the squire. This is the Black Heart and Hound's account book. These crosses stand for names of ships or towns that they sank or plundered. The sums are the scoundrel's share, and where he feared an impunity. You see, he added something clear. Off a carcass. Now, you see, here is some unhappy vessel boarded off that coast. God help the poor souls that manned her coral long ago. Right, said the doctor. See what it is to be a traveler. Right, and the amounts increased, you see, as he rose in rank. There was little else in the volume but a few bearings of places noted in the blank leaves toward the end, and a table for reading French, English, and Spanish monthlies to a common value. Thrifty man, cried the doctor. He wasn't the one to be cheated. And now, said the squire, for the other. The paper had been sealed in several places with a thimble by the way of seal. The very thimble, perhaps, that I had found in the captain's pocket. The doctor opened the seals with great care, and there fell out the map of an island, with latitude and longitude, surroundings, names of hills and bays, inlets in every particular that would be needed to bring a ship to safe anchorage upon its shores. It is about 9 miles long and 5 miles across. Shaped, you might say, like a fat dragon standing up, it had 2 fine landlocked harbors, and a hill in the center marked the spyglass. There were several additions of a later date, but after all, 3 crosses of red ink, 2 on the north part of the island, and 1 in the southwest. And besides this last, in the same red ink, and in a small, neat hand, very different from the captain's tawdry characters, these words, "Bulk of treasures here." Over on the back of the same hand had written this furthermore: "Tall tree, spyglass shoulder, bearing a point to the end of NNE, Skeleton Island, ESE, and by E, 10 feet. The bar of silver is in the north catch. You can find it by the trend of the east hammock, 10 fathoms south of the Black Crag, with face found on it. The arms are easily found in Sandhill, N, point of north in the Cape, bearing E, the quarter N." All. That was all, but brief as it was, and to me incomprehensible. It filled the squire and Dr. Lears with delight. "Leslie," said the squire, "you will give up this wretched practice at once. Tomorrow I start for Bristol. In 3 weeks' time, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 10 days, we'll have the best ships, sir, and the choice crew of England. Hawkins shall come as cabin boy. You'll make a famous cabin boy, Hawkins. You, Leslie, are ship's doctor. I am admiral. We'll take Ruth, Joyce, and Hunter. We'll have favorable winds and a quick passage, and not the least difficulty in finding the spot and money to eat, to roll in, to play duck, and drink with even after." "Trainly," said the doctor, "I'll go with you, and I'll go bail for it. So will Jim, and will be a credit to the undertaking. There's only one man I'm afraid of." "And who is that?" cried Squire. "Name the dog, sir." "You," replied the doctor, "for you cannot hold your tongue. We are not the only men who know this paper. These fellows who attacked the inn tonight, bold, desperate blades for sure, and the rest who stayed aboard that lugger and more, dare say, not far off, are, one and all, through thick and thin, bound that they'll get that money. We need none of us go alone till we get to sea. Jim and I shall stick together in the meanwhile. You take Joyce and Hunter when you ride to Bristol, and, from first to last, not one of us must breathe a word of what we've found. Leslie," returned the squire, "you are always in the right of it. I'll be as silent as the grave." Chapter 7. I Go to Bristol. It was longer than the squire imagined. We were ready for sea, and none of our plans, not even Dr. Lindsay's of keeping beside him, could be carried out as we intended. The doctor had to go to London for a physician to take control of his practice. The squire was hard at work at Bristol, and I lived on the hall under the charge of an old reader, the gamekeeper, almost a prisoner, but full of dreams of sea and most charming anticipations of strange islands and adventures. I brooded by the hour together over the map, all the details of which I well remembered. Sitting by the fire in the housekeeper's room, I approached an island in my fancy. From every possible direction, I explored every acre of its surface. I climbed 1,000 times to that tall hill they call the Spyglass, and from the top enjoyed the most wonderful and changing prospects. Sometimes the isle was thick with savages, with whom we fought, sometimes full of dangerous animals that hunted us. But in all my fancies, nothing occurred to me so strange and tragic as our actual adventures. So the weeks passed on. So one fine day there came a letter addressed to Dr. Lindsay, with this addition: to be opened in case of his absence by Tom Reduth or young Hawkins. Obeying his owner, we found, or rather I found, for the gamekeeper was a poor hand at reading anything but print, the following important news: Old Anchor Inn, Bristol, March 1st, 17. Dear Lindsay, as I do not know whether you are at the Hall or still in London, I send this in trouble to both places. A ship is bought and fitted. She lies at anchor ready for sea. You never imagined a sweeter schooner. A child might sail her 200 tons, named Helena. I got her through my old friend Blanley, who has proved himself throughout the most surprising trump. The admirable fellow literally slaved in my interest, and so, I may say, did every one in Bristol. As soon as they got wind of the port we sailed for treasure, I mean. Ruderth, said I, interrupting the letter. Dr. Lindsley did not like that. The squire had been talking after all. Well, who's a better right, growled the gatekeeper. A pretty rum go if squire ain't to talk for Dr. Lindsay, I should think. At that I gave up all attempt at commentary and read straight on. Blandly himself found that his clothes in it, and by the most admirable management got her for the merest trifle. There is a class of men in Bristol monstrously prejudiced against Blandly. They go the length of declaring that this honest creature would do anything for money, that the Himmelflow belonged to him, and should be sold it to me absurdly high. The most transparent calamities, nothing of them dare, however, to deny the merits of the ship. So far, there was not a hitch. The work-people, to be sure, riggers and what not, were almost annoyingly slow, but time cured that. It was the crew that troubled me. I wish a rounded score of men in cases natives, buccaneers, or odious French. I had the worry of the deduce itself to find so much as half a dozen, till the most remarkable stroke of fortune brought me the very man that I required. I was standing on the dock when, by interest accident, I fell in talk with him. I found he was an old sailor, kept a public longhouse, knew all seafaring men in Bristol, and lost his health ashore, and wanted a good berth as a cook to get to sea again. He had hobbled down there that morning, he said, to get the smell of salt, and was mostly touched as he would have been, and out of pure pity I engaged him on the spot to be the ship's cook. Long John Silver, he is called, and has lost a leg, but I regard it as a recommendation, since he lost it in his country's service under the immortal Hawk. He was no pension. Leslie, imagine the abominable age we live in. Well, I thought I had only found a cook, but it was a crew I had discovered. Between Silver and myself, we got together a few days a company of the toughest old salts imaginable. Not pretty to look at, but fellows, by their faces, of the most indomitable spirit. I declare we fight a frigate. Long John even got rid of 2 out of 6 or 7 I imagine engaged. He showed me in a moment that we were just the short of fresh water swabs we had to fear in an adventure of importance. I am in the almost magnificent health and spirits, eating like a bull, sleeping like a tree, and I shall not enjoy a moment till I hear my old trampolines tramping around the capstan. Seaward ho! Hang the treasure! It's the glory of the sea that has turned my head. So now, Lively, come port. Do not lose an hour, if you respect me. Let young Hawkins go at once to see his mother, with Rethruth for a guard, and then both come full speed to Bristol. John Swanahay. P.S. I did not tell you that Blandly, who, by the way, is to send a consort after us, if we don't turn up by the end of August, had found an admirable fellow for sailing master, a stiff man, which I regret, but in other respects a treasure. Long John Silver unearthed a very competent man for a mate, a man named Arrow. I have a boot swain for pipes, Leslie, so things go man o' war fashion aboard a good ship Apollonia. I forget to tell you that Silver is a man of stubbornness. I know of my knowledge that he has a banker's account which has never been overdrawn. He leaves his wife to manage the inn, as she is a woman of color. A pair of old bachelors like you and I must be excused for guessing that it is the wife quite as much as health that sends him back to be roaming. JT. PPPS. Hawkins may stay one night with his mother. JT. You can fancy the excitement into which that letter put me. I was half beside myself with glee, and if I ever despised a man, it was old Tom Rudolph, who can do nothing but grumble and lament. Any of the under gamekeepers would have gladly changed places with him, but such was not the squire's pleasure, and the squire's pleasure was like the law among them all. Nobody but old Rudolph would have dared so much even to grumble. The next morning he and I set out on foot for the Admiral Benbow, and there I found my mother in good health and spirits. The captain, who had so long been a cause of so much discomfort, was gone, where the wicked keys from travelling. The squire had everything repaired, and the public rooms had sign repainted, and added some furniture. Above all, a beautiful armchair for mother. In the bar, he had found her a boy as an apprentice also, so that she would not want help while I was gone. It was on seeing that boy that I understood for the first time my situation. I had thought up to the moment of my adventures before me, not at all of the home that I was leaving, and now at the sight of this clumsy stranger who was to stay here in my place beside my mother, I had my first attack of tears. I am afraid I led that boy a dog's life, for he was new to work. I had 100 opportunities of setting him right and putting him down, and I was not slow to profit by them. The night passed, and the next day after dinner, Ruth and I were afoot again on the road. I said goodbye to mother in the cove where I had lived since I was born, and dear old Admiral Benbow, since he was repainted, no longer quite so dear. One of my last thoughts was of the captain, who had so often strode along the beach with his cocked hat, his saber-cut cheek, and his old brass telescope. Next moment we had turned the corner, and my home was out of sight. The mail picked us up about dusk as Royal George on the hearth. I was wedged in between Rudolph and a stout old gentleman, and in spite of the swift motion and the cold night air, I must have dozed a great deal from the very first, and then slept like a log uphill and down dale, through stage after stage, for when I was awakened at last it was by a punch of the ribs. I opened my eyes to find that we were standing still before a large building in the city street, and the day had been broken a long time. "Where are we?" I asked. "Bristol," said Tom. "Get down." Mr. Twanley had taken up his residence at an inn far down the docks, to superintend the work upon the schooner. Thither we had now to walk in our way. To my great delight, lay along the quays beside the great multitude of ships of all sizes, rigs, and nations. In one, sailors were singing at their work. In another, there were men aloft, high above my head, hanging to threads that seemed no thicker than a spider's. Though I had lived by the shore all my life, I seemed never see till then. The smell of tar and salt was something new. I saw the most wonderful figureheads that had been far over the ocean. I saw, besides, many old sailors with rings in their ears and whiskers curled in ringlets and tarry pigtails, and their swaggering, clumsy sea walk. And if I had seen as many kings or archbishops, I could not have been more delighted. And I was going to see myself, to sea in a schooner, with a piping boatswain and a pigtail singing seaman, to sea bound for an unknown island, and to speak for buried treasure. While I was still in this delighted dream, We came suddenly in front of a large inn. It meant Squire Tillman. I dressed out like a sea officer, in stout blue cloth, coming out the door with a smile on his face, and a capital imitation of a sailor's walk. "Here you are," he cried, and the doctor came last night from London. "Bravo! The ship's company complete." "Oh, sir," cried I, "when do we sail?" "Sail," he says, "we wait till tomorrow." Chapter 8. At the Sign of Spyglass. When I had done breakfasting, the squire gave me a note addressing to John Silver, at the sign of the Spyglass, and told me I should easily find the place by following the line of docks and keeping a bright lookout for a little tavern with a large brass telescope for a sign. I set off, overjoyed at this opportunity to see some more of the ships and seamen. I picked my way among the great crowd of people in carts. Bales for the dock was now at its busiest, until I found the tavern in question. It was a bright enough little place of entertainment. The sign was newly painted. The windows had neat red curtains. The floor was cleanly sanded. There was a street on either side, and an open door on both, which made the large, low room pretty clear to see in spite of clouds of tobacco smoke. The customers were mostly seafaring men, and they talked so loudly that I hung at the door, almost afraid to enter. As I was waiting, a man came out of a side room, and at a glance I was almost sure he to be Long John. His left leg was cut off close by the hip. Under the left shoulder he carried a crutch, which he managed with wonderful dexterity, hopping about upon it like a bird. He was very tall and strong, with a face as big as a ham, plain and pale, but intelligent and smiling. Indeed, he seemed in the most cheerful spirits, whistling as he moved about the tables, with a merry word or a slap on the shoulder, for more favored of his guests. Now, to tell you the truth, from the very first mention of Long John in Squire Tully's letter, I had taken a fear in my mind that he might prove to me the very one-legged settler whom I watched for so long at the old Benbow. But one look at the man before me was enough. I had seen the captain, Black Dog, and the blind man Pew, and I thought I knew what a buccaneer was like. A very different creature, according to me, from this clean and pleasant landlord. I plucked up courage at once, crossed the threshold, and walked right up to the man where he stood, propped on his crutch, talking to across me. "Mr. Silver, sir?" I asked, holding out the note. "Yes, my lad," said he. "Such is my name, to be sure. And who may you be?" And when he saw the squire's letter, he seemed to be giving me something almost like a start. "Oh," he said quite loud, and offering his hand, "I see. You are our new cabin boy. I am pleased to see you." And he took my hand in his large, firm grasp, suddenly, and made for the door. I was close by him, and he was out in the street in a moment, but in his hurry had attracted my notice, and I recognized him at a glance. It was a tall-faced man, wanting 2 fingers, who had come first, Admiral Benbow. "Oh," I cried, "stop him, it's Black Dog." "I don't care 2 coppers who he is," cried Silver, "but he hasn't paid his score. Hurry, run and catch him." One of the others, who was nearest the door, leaped up and started in pursuit. If he were Admiral Hawking, he shall pay his score, cried Silver, and then, relinquishing my hand, "Who did you say he was?" he asked. "Black what? Dog, sir," said I. "Has Mr. Curley not told you of the buccaneers? He is one of them." "So," cried Silver, "in my house? Ben, run and help Harry. One of those swabs, was he? Was that you drinking with him, Morgan? Set up here." The man whom he called Morgan, an old, gray-haired, mahogany-faced sailor, came forward, pretty sheepishly, rolling his quid. "Now, Morgan," said Long John very sternly, "you never clapped eyes on that black dog before, did you?" "No, aren't I, sir," said Morgan, with a salute. "Now, didn't you know his name, did you?" "No, sir." By the powers, Tom Morgan, it is good for you, exclaimed the landlord. If you had been mixed up with the like of that, you would have never put another foot in my house. You may lay to that. And what was he saying to you? I don't rightly know, sir, answered Morgan. Do you call it a head on your shoulders, or a blessed dead eye? Cried Long John. Don't rightly know, don't you? Perhaps you don't happen to rightly know who you are speaking to, perhaps. Come on, what was he jawing? Flagships, caps, ships, pipe up. What was it? He was talking of Keelholland, answered Morgan. Keelholland, was you, and a mighty suitable thing, too, and you may lay to that. Get back to your place for a lover, Tom. And then, as Morgan rolled back to his seat, Silver added to me in a confidential whisper that was very flattering, as I thought. He's quite an honest man, Tom Morgan, only stupid. And now he ran on again aloud. Let's see, Black Dog. No, I don't know the name. Nor I. Yeah, I think I've seen the swab. He used to come here with a blind beggar, he used. Then he did. You may be sure, said I. I knew that blind man, too. His name was Pew. It was, cried Silver, now quite excited. Pew, that were his name for certain. Ah, he looked like a shark, he did. If we run down this Black Dog now, there'll be news for Captain Swanley. Ben's a good runner. A few seamen run better than Ben. He should run him down, hand over hand, by the powers. He talked O'Keelan, did he? I'll keel-haul him. All the time he was jerking out these phrases, he was stumbling up and down the tavern on his crutch, slapping tables with his hand and giving such a show of excitement as would have convinced an old man, Bailey judge, or Bow Street runner. My suspicions had been thoroughly reawakened on finding Black Dog at the spyglass, and I watched the cook narrowly, but he was too deep and too ready and too clever for me, and by the time the two men had come back out of breath, confessed they had lost a track in crowd, and had been scolded like thieves, I would have gone bail for innocence of Long John Silver. See here now, Hawkins, said he, here's a blessed hard thing on a man like me, now ain't it? There's Captain Swarley. What's he to think? Here I have his confounded son of a Dutchman sitting in my own house, drinking of my own rum. Here you come and tells me of it plain, and here I let him give us all the slip before my blessed deadlights. Now, Hawkins, you do me justice with Captain. You're a lad, you are, but you're as smart as paint. I can see that when you first came in. Now, here it is. What could I do as this old timber I hobble on? When I was a B master mariner, have come up alongside him, hand over hand, and broached him in a brace of old shakes. I would, and now, and then all of a sudden, he stomped, and his right jaw dropped as though he remembered something. The score, he burst out. 3 goes a rum. Why, shiver my timbers, if I hadn't forgotten my score. And falling on a bench, he laughed until his tears ran down his cheeks. I could not help joining, and we laughed together, peal over peal, until the tavern rang again. Why, what a perilous old sea-calf I am, he said, at last, wiping his cheeks. You and me should get on well, Hawkins, for I'll take my Davy I should be ratted, ship's boy. But come now, stand by to go about. This won't do. Duty is duty. Messmates, I'll put on my old cocked hat and set up along of you to Captain Trelawney, and report this here affair. For mind you, it's serious, young Hawkins, and neither you nor me come out of it with what I make so bold as to call credit. Nor you neither, says you. Not smart, none of the pair of us smart, but dash my buttons. That was a good un about my score. And he began to laugh again, and that so heartily that did, though I did not see the joke as he did, I was again obliged to join him in his mirth. On our little walk along the quays, he made himself the most interesting companion. telling me about the different ships that we passed by, their rig, tonnage, and nationality, explaining the work that was going forward, how one was discharging another, taking in cargo, and a third making ready for sea, and every now and then telling me some little anecdote of ships or seamen, or repeating a nautical phrase till I had learned it perfectly. I began to see that he was one of the best possible shipmates. When we got to the inn, the squire and Dr. Lively were seated together, finishing a quart of ale with a toast in it, before they could go aboard the schooner on the visit of inspection. Long John told the story from first to last, with a great deal of spirit and most perfect truth. That was how it were now, weren't it, Hawkins? He would say now and then again, and I would always bear him entirely out. The two gentlemen regretted that Black Dog had got away, but we all agreed there was nothing to be done, and after he had been complimented, Long John took up his crutch and departed. "All hands aboard by 4 this afternoon," shouted the squire after him. "Aye, aye, sure," cried the cook in the passage. "Well, squire," said Dr. Lively, "don't put much faith in your discoveries as a general thing, but I shall say, this John Silver suits me." "That man's a perfect trump," declared the squire. "And now," added the doctor, "Jim may come take on board with us, may he not?" "To be sure he may," said Squire. "Take your hat, Hawkins, and we'll see the ship." Chapter 9. Powder and Arms. The Hilflony lay some way out, and we went under the figureheads and around the sterns of many other ships and their cables, sometimes granted beneath our keels, and sometimes swung above us. At last, however, we swung alongside and were met and saluted as we stepped aboard by mate Mr. Arrow, a brown old tailor, with earrings in his ears and a squint. He and the squire were very thick and friendly, but I soon observed that things were not the same between Mr. Connolly and the captain. This last was a sharp-looking man, who seemed angry with everything on board, and soon to tell us why, for he had hardly got down into the cabin when a sailor followed us. "Captain Smollett, sir, asking to speak with you," said he. "I am always at the captain's orders." "Show him in," said the squire. The captain, who was close behind his messenger, entered at once, and shut the door behind him. "Well, sir," said the captain, "better speak plain. I believe, at risk of offence, I don't like this cruise. I don't like the men, and I don't like my officer. That's short and sweet." "Perhaps, sir, you don't like the ship?" inquired the squire, very angry, I could see. "I can't speak as to that, sir, not having seen her tried," said the captain. "She seems a clever craft, more I can't say." "Possibly, sir, you may not like your employer either," said the squire. But here Dr. Lively cut in. "Stay a bit," said he. "Stay a bit. No use in such questions as that but to produce ill feeling. The captain has said too much, for he has said too little, and I'm bound to say that I'm required an explanation of his words. You don't, you say, like this cruise. Now why?" "I was engaged, sir, on what we call sealed orders, to sail the ship for that gentleman where he should bid me," said the captain. "So far, so good. But now I find that every man before the mast knows more than I do. I don't call that fair now, do you?" "No," said the doctor, "I don't." "Next," said the captain, "I learn we are going after treasure. I hear it from my own hands, mind you. Now, treasure is a trickish word. I don't like treasure voyages, on my account, and I don't like them above all when they are secret, and when, begging your pardon, Mr. Tonley, the secret has been told to the parrot." "Silver's parrot?" asked the squire. "It's a way of speaking," said Captain Bladd, I mean. "It's my belief neither of you gentlemen know what you're about, but I'll tell you that my way of it. Life or death in close run." "That is all clear, and I dare say true enough," replied Dr. Lively. "We take the risk, but we are not so ignorant as you believe us. Next, you say you don't like the crew. They're not good seamen." "I don't like them, sir," returned Captain Summit, and I think I should have had the choosing of my own hands, if you go to that. Perhaps you should, replied the doctor. My friend should, perhaps, have taken you along with him. But the slight, if there be one, was unintentional. And you don't like Mr. Arrow? I don't, sir. I believe he's a good seaman, and he's too free with the crew to be a good officer. A mate should keep himself to himself. Shouldn't drink with the men after the mast. Do you mean he drinks? Cried the squire. No, sir, replied the captain, only that he's too familiar. Well, now, the short and long of it, captain. Perhaps the doctor tell us what you want. Well, gentlemen, you are determined to go on this cruise. Like iron, answered the squire. Very good, said the captain. Then, as you've heard me quite patiently saying these things, that I would not prove, hear me a few words more. They are putting the power and the arms in the forehold. Now, you have a good place under the cabin. Why not put them there? First point, when you're bringing 4 of your own people with you, and then they tell me some of them are berthed forward. Why not give them the berths here beside the captain? Second point, any more? Asked Mr. Twinley. One more, said the captain. There's been too much blabbling already. Far too much, agreed the doctor. I'll tell you now what I've learned myself, continued Captain Smollett, that you have a map of an island, that there's crosses on the map to show where treasure is, and the island lies when he named the latitude and longitude exactly. I never told that, cried the squire, to a soul. The hands know it, sir, returned the captain, lively, that you have been your Hawkins, cried the squire. It doesn't matter who it is, replied the doctor, and I could see that neither nor the captain paid much regard to Mr. Charlie's protest. Neither did I. To be sure, he was so loose talker, yet in this case I believe he was really right, and that nobody had told the situation of the island. Well, gentlemen, continued the captain, I don't know who has this map, but I make it a point it shall be kept secret even from me and Mr. Arrow. Otherwise, I would ask you to let me resign. I see, said the doctor. You wish to keep this matter dark, and to make a garrison of stern partnership man with my friend's own people, and provided with all the arms and powder aboard. In other words, you fear a mutiny. Sir, said Captain Smollett, with no intention to take offence, I deny your right to put words into my mouth. No, Captain, sir, would be justified in going to sea at all if he had grown enough of that. For as for Mr. Arrow, I believe him thoroughly honest. Some of the men are still the same. All may be for what I know, but I am responsible for the ship's safety and the life of every man jack aboard of her. I see things going as I think, not quite right, and I ask you to take certain precautions, or else let me resign my berth, and that's all. Captain Smollett, began the doctor with a smile, do you ever hear the fable of the mountain and the mouse? You will excuse me, I dare say, but you remind me of the fable. When you came in here, I'll stake my wig you meant more than this. Doctor, said the captain, you are smart. When I came in here, I meant to get discharged. I had no thought that Mr. Tunwell would hear a word. No more I would, cried the squire. Had Leslie not been here, I should have seen to you the deuce. As it is, I have heard you. I will do as you desire. But I think the worse of you. That as you please, sir, said the captain. You'll find I'll do my duty. And with that, he took his leave. Charlie, said the doctor, consciously, to all my notions, I believe you have managed to get 2 honest men aboard with you. That man and John Silver. Silver, if you like, cried the squire. But as for that intolerable humbug, I declare I think his conduct unmanly, unseemly, and downright un-English. Well, said the doctor, we shall see. When we came on the deck, the men had begun already to take out arms and powder, yo-hoing at their work, while the captain and Mr. Arrow stood by superintending. The new arrangement was quite to my liking. The whole schooner had been overhauled. 6 berths had been made astern out of what had been the after part of the main hold, and this set of cabins was only joined to the gallery and the forecastle by a sparred passage on the port side. It had been originally meant the captain, Mr. Arrow, Hunter, Joyce, and Doctor and the Squire were to accompany these 6 berths. Now, Ruderth and I were to get 2 of them, and Mr. Arrow and the captain were to sleep on the deck in the companion, which had been a large at each side till you might have almost called it a roundhouse. Very low it was still, of course, but there was room to swing, 2 hammocks, and even the mate seemed pleased with arrangements. Even he, perhaps, had been doubtful as to the crew, but there was only a guess, for, as you shall hear, we had not long benefit from his opinion. We were all hard at work changing the powder and berths when the last man or 2, and Long John, along with him, came off in a shore boat. The cook came up the side like a monkey for cleverness, and as soon as he saw what was doing, "So, yo, mates," he said, "what's this?" "We're changing the powder, Jack," answered one. "Why the powders?" cried Long John. "If we do, we'll miss the morning tide." "My orders," said the captain shortly. "You may go below, my man. Hands will want supper." "Aye, aye, sir," answered the cook, and touching his forelock, he disappeared at once in the direction of his galley. "That's a good man, Captain," said the doctor. "Very likely, sir," replied Captain Smollett. "Easy with that, easy men." He ran on to the fellows who were shifting the powder, and then suddenly observing me examining the swivel, we carried him in the ships. A long brass 9. "Here, you ship's boy," he cried, "out of that. Off with you to the cook and get some work." And then I was hurrying off, I heard him say, quite loudly to the doctor, "I have no favourites on my ship. I assure you that I was quit of the Squire's way, thinking and hated the captain deeply." Chapter 10. The Voyage. All that night we were in a great bustle to get things stowed in their place, and boatfuls of Squire's friends, Mr. Blandley and the like, coming off to wish him a good voyage and a safe return. We never had a night at the Admiral Benbow when I had half the work, and I was dog-tired when, a little before dawn, the boatswain sounded its pipe, and the crew began to man the capstan bars. I might have been twice as weary, yet I would not have left the deck. All was so new and interesting to me. The brief commands, the shrill notes of the whistle, the men bustling to their places, and glimmer of the ship's lanterns. "Now, barbecue, tip a stave," cried one. "The old one," cried another. "Aye, aye, mateys," said Long John, who was standing by with a crutch under his arm, and at once broke out in the air words I knew so well. 15 men on dead man's chest, and the whole crew bore cherries, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. And at the third hoe drove the bars before them with a will. Even at the exciting moment, it came back to old Admiral Benbow in a second, and I seemed to hear the voice of the captain piping in at chores. But soon the anchor was shored up. Soon it was hanging dripping at the bows. Soon the sails began to draw, and the land shipping to flit by on either side. And before I could lay down to snatch an hour of slumber, the Hypholia had begun her voyage to the Island of Treasure. I am not going to relate the voyage in detail. It was fairly preposterous. The ship proved to be a good ship, the crew were capable seamen, and the captain thoroughly understood his business. But before we came the length of Treasure Island, 2 or 3 things had happened which required to be known. Mr. Arrow, first of all, turned out even worse than the captain had feared. He had no command among the men, and people did what they pleased with him. But that was by no means the worst of it, for after a day or 2 at sea, he began to appear on the deck with a hazy eye, red cheeks, sputtering tongue, and other marks of drunkenness. Time after time he was ordered below with disgrace. Sometimes he fell and cut himself. Sometimes he lay all day long in his bunk at one side of the companion. Sometimes for a day or two he would be almost somber and tend to his work at least passably. In the meantime, we could never make out where he got the drink. That was the ship's mystery. Watch him as he pleased. He could do nothing to solve it. And when we asked him to his face, he would only laugh if he were drunk, and if he were sober, deny solemnly that he never tasted anything but water. He was not only useless as an officer and had a bad influence among the men, but it was plain that at this rate he must soon kill himself outright. So nobody was much surprised, nor very sorry, when one dark night, with a hurried sea, he disappeared entirely, and had seen no more. Overboard, said the captain. Well, gentlemen, that saves the trouble of putting him in irons. But there we were, without a mate, and it was necessary, of course, to advance one of the men, the boatswain, John Anderson, to the likeliest man aboard. Though he kept his old title, he served in a way as mate. Mr. Tunley had followed the sea, and his knowledge made him very useful, for he often took a watch himself in easy weather, and the coxswain, Erswold was a carefully wily, old, experienced seaman, who could be trusted at a pitch with almost anything. He was a great confidant of Long John Silver, and so the mention of his name leads me on to speak of our ship's cook, Barbecue, as the men call him. Aboard the ship he carried his crutch by a lanyard around his neck to have both his hands as free as possible. It was something to see him wedge the foot of the crutch against a bulkhead and, propped against it, yielding to every movement of the ship, get on with his cooking like some safe ashore. Still more strange it was to see him in the heaviest of weather cross the deck. He had a line or two rigged up to help him cross the widest spaces. Long John's earrings, they were called, and he would hand himself from one place to another, now using the crutch, now trailing in alongside by the lanyard, as quickly as another man could walk. Yet some of the men who had sailed with him before expressed their pity to see him so reduced. He's no common man, Barbecue, said the coxswain to me. He had a good schooling in his young days, and can speak like a book when so minded, and brave he lies nothing alongside of Long John. I see him grapple 4 and knock their heads together, him unarmed. All the crew respected and even obeyed him. He had a way of talking to each and doing everybody some particular service. To me, he was unweariably kind and always glad to see me in the galley, which he kept as clean as a new pin, the dishes hanging up burnished, and his parrot in the cage in the corner. Some away, Hawkins, he would say. Come have a yarn with John. Nobody more welcome than yourself, my son. Sit down and hear the news. Here's Captain Flint's. I call my parrot Captain Flint, after the famous buccaneer. Here's Captain Flint predicting success of our voyage. Wasn't you, Captain? And the parrot would say with great rapidity, pieces of 8, pieces of 8, pieces of 8, till you wondered that it could not be out of breath until Johnson threw his handkerchief over the cage. Now, that bird, he would say, is maybe 200-300 years old. Hawkins, they live forever. Mostly, if anybody's seen more wickedness, it must be the devil himself. She sailed with England, the great Captain England, the pirate. She's been at Madagascar, and at Malabar, and Cenarium, and Providence, and Portobello. She was at the fishing up at the wrecked plate ships. It was there she learned pieces of 8, and little wonder, 350,000 of them, Hawkins. She was at the boarding of the Victory of the Indies out of gold. She was, and to look at her you would think she was in a baby. But you smell power, don't you? Captain, stand by to go about, the parrot would scream. Ah, she's a handsome craft, she is, the cook would say and give her sugar from his pocket, and then the bird would peck at the buds and swear straight on, passing belief for wickedness. There, John would add, you can't touch pitch and not be mucked, lad. Here's this poor old innocent bird of mine swearing blue fire, and none the wiser. You may lay to that. She would swear the same, in a manner of speaking, before the chaplain, and John would touch his forehead with a solemnly way that would make me think he was the best of men. In the meantime, Squire and Captain Summit were still on pretty distant terms with one another. The Squire made no bones about the matter. He desired the captain. The captain, on his part, never spoke but when he was spoken to, and then sharp and short, and dry, and would not word wasted. He owned when driven into a corner, and he seemed to have been wrong about the crew. That some were as brisk as he wanted to see, and all had behaved fairly well. As for the ship, he had taken a downright fancy to her. She'll lie a point nearer the wind than a man has a right to expect of his own married wife, sir. But, he would add, all I say is, we're not home again, and I don't like the cruise. The Squire, at this, would turn away and march up and down the deck, chin in air. A trifle more than a man, he would say, and I would explode. We had some heavy weather, which only proved the qualities of a Hippolonian. Every man on board seemed well content, and they must have been hard to please if they had been otherwise, for it is my belief that there was never a ship's company so spoiled since Noah put to sea. Double grog was going on the least excuse. There was buff on odd days, as for instance, if the Squire heard it was any man's birthday, and always a barrel of apples standing abroached in the waist, for annoyance to help him that had a fancy. Never knew good come of it yet, the captain said to Dr. Lively. Spoil folks' hands make devils. That's my belief. And good did come of the apple barrel, as you shall hear. As for it, had not been for that we should have had no note of warning, and might have all perished by the hand of treachery. This is how it came about. We had run by the trades to get the wind of the island we were after. I am not allowed to be more plain. And now we were running down for it, with a bright outlook of day. It was about the last day of our outward voyage, by the largest competition. Sometime that night, or at latest before noon of the morrow, we should sight Treasure Island. We were heading south-southwest, and had a steady breeze abeam, and a quiet sea. The Hippolonia rolled steadily, dripped her bowsprit down, and then with a sniff of spray. All was drawing alow and aloft. Every one was in the barest of spirits, because we were now so hurt at the end of the first part of our adventure. Now, part after sundown, when all my work was over, and I was on my way to my berth, it occurred to me that I sounded like an apple. I ran on deck. The watch was all forward out looking for the island. The man at the helm was watching the waft of sail, and whistling away gently to himself, and that was the only sound except for the swish of the sea against the bows around the sides of the ship. In I got bodily into the apple barrel, and found there was scarce an apple left. But sitting down where in the dark, with the sound of waters and the rocky movement of the ship, I had either fallen asleep or was on the point of doing so, when a heavy man sat down with a rather crash close by. The barrel shook as he leaned his shoulders against it. I was just about to jump up when the man began to speak. It was Silver's voice, and before I heard a dozen words, I would have not shown myself for all the world, but lay there, trembling and listening in the extreme of fear and curiosity. For these dozen words, I understood that the lives of all the honest men aboard desperate upon me alone.